Have you ever wondered what's inside a out the front knife? Specifically a Microtech. Well, I guess I'll show you guys today. Stay tuned. So welcome back everybody, I'm Babyface P. Today we're going to look inside a out the front knife. And the insides of these pretty much the same across the board. This one obviously happens to be a Microtech. I am a huge fan of Microtechs. I really like their stuff. This is a UTX 85. This is a really old, I say really old, it's from 2012, an older Combat Troodon that I just picked up that's been well loved. Beautiful knife though. Sorry, no, not Combat Troodon, regular Troodon. So, UTX 85, what's on the inside? To get inside your knife, if you plan on opening one of these up, remember, if you're going to open this up, watch this, do it carefully, and don't lose any parts, because if you lose parts, Microtech is not going to be happy with you, and they may charge you to fix it. You're going to need a screwdriver bit that is proprietary. I know, everybody hates that word, especially people in the knife industry, but proprietary bit that fits yours. If you own a bunch of knives, own a bunch of Microtechs, or plan on keeping yours, maintaining it, cleaning it, whatever, you can follow their suggested method, which is to hose it out with oil and then spray it out with air. Personally, I don't like putting oil in these because it does gum them up over time as lint gets in. I'd suggest picking up one of these. Find the one that's appropriate for your knife, buy it, keep it, maintain your blade. These are kind of finicky over time as dust and dirt collects on the inside. They do get gummed up. So anyways, let's go ahead and start taking this thing apart. Right, screws are all loosened. As you go to take this top scale off, be warned that this button over here, your side button, is under spring tension. I hope you guys can see that. It moves a little bit. It's under spring tension, so when you take this top scale off, that will shoot off and you'll lose your spring and it'll be gone forever. So, careful as you do this. Hold your firing mechanism in, pull your top scale off, and then release that slowly. So there, the inside of a typical out the front. This is obviously a Microtech, but they're all pretty much the same. We're going to take our spring and carriage off. I don't know if they call it a carriage. I'm going to call it a carriage because it seems like a carriage mechanism. Put that aside for now. And to relieve tension on your blade, and you can do this before, you can lock your blade out at the end, or before. But to remove the blade, you're going to push in on this sear mechanism here on the front. I'm sorry, you're going to push in on the sear mechanism on the back. Push your blade forward, and your blade will extend out. That's pretty much it. To take this down further, I'm going to grab some needle nose. I have a pair of needle nose. Basically, you take this down further, you take this stop pin out, and the blade will come out. You can then clean the entire chassis. Don't use any lubricant. I wouldn't put oil back in it. That just collects dust bunnies and causes it to malfunction over time. Clean it. Use something like an acetone or an alcohol to get all the oils and greases out. If you want, you can put a little bit of grease on this spring here. Excuse me. If you want, you can put a little bit of grease on the spring here. That will help dampen that twang sound that they can make sometimes. But you don't have to. You put it back together, it'll work just fine. But that's not what you guys are here for. A lot of you are probably here to see how this functions. And when it comes to firearms technology, I think there are a lot of similarities that you'll find here to the way guns work. That's why these interest me a lot. So let me make sure I'm in frame here. So these two locking bars, which I kind of call sears, like a trigger sear, are what hold the blade out and hold the blade in. As the blade comes past that locking bar, you'll see it spring into place, like that. And that effectively locks the blade out, which if you ever watch X-Ring's channel, Ray talks about how this, an out the front knife, when locked open, basically becomes a fixed blade. It's true. The way this is mechanically locked, it's pretty much a fixed blade. It will have a little bit of movement that's needed so you can overextend enough to where this will spring out in time. It's all mechanically timed so this gets out under the blade fast enough so when this comes back a little, it'll hold it. But that's how it locks out. If you were to push this, what I call a sear, in, let me use my finger. Actually, here, I'll show you like this. If you push this sear in, the knife will retract, and it will then go past this locking block, sear, whatever you want to call it, and that will spring in on the back side of the blade, you'll see in a sec, and lock it in place in the rear. So that's mechanically how this blade locks back and locks forward. But what causes those sear points to unlock and allow the blade to move? This carriage is the answer. This carriage that sits on top and rides on the inside of the chassis is what causes that. You'll notice, one, there is a sear engagement. I'm going to call it that. It's a sear engagement here. This little triangle angled piece intersects with this sear, this locking block. And on the reverse side, you flip it over, there's another one here that interacts with this sear, what I call the sear, the locking block. Put this on top, and as your thumb interacts with, so your thumb button would go here and lock into that. As your thumb pushes forward, you'll notice that this engagement point here will push that sear out of the way and unlock the blade. So that unlocks it and allows it to come forward. Same for the rear. When you pull backwards on it, the sear engagement here that you can kind of see under there will unlock. You see how it goes through, unlocks, and allows the blade to come back in. The locking blocks are what hold this all together. The layer on top of that, though, so basically, if that's all you have with no spring, no nothing, it's a gravity knife. You push forward to unlock it, you drip the blade out and lock it in the front, you pull back to unlock it and push the blade back in until it locks up. That's what it would effectively be, a gravity knife. But to make it function as a double action spring assisted knife, let me pull this together, you have to have your spring with your spring pause. And that's what I'm going to call it. I don't know what the official names for any of these parts are, but when we're talking gun terms, this feels like a paw to me. So your spring and your spring paw, two of them. Okay. There we go. So how this all works together now is this spring is under a little bit of tension, holding those two pieces together, pulling on each other. As you go and push your button forward, and I'm not going to push it into my hand, don't worry. As you pull forward, you can see this back section holds up because it's being held by this by the locking block. You'll pull forward until you get spring tension. This will slide the locking block out of the way, at which point the blade will shoot forward and lock into this spring-loaded mechanism, the spring locking block. And then in the reverse, it's the same thing. As you pull backwards on it, this one will hang up while this pulls until the cam, or until the slide hits that locking block, pushes out of the way, and then the blade shoots back in. Really, really simple design, I guess you would say. It's pretty ingenious how this is put together. And pretty much any of the blades that you find, any of the OTFs that you find, will look just about the same on the inside. Other than where these sear points, locking blocks sit, most of these side actuated out the fronts will all look the same. The only one that's a little different is the die rack, because the button has to interact with the carriage via the top instead of the side. So the carriage and stuff looks a little different. But overall, they're all pretty much going to function the same. So what's important on these blades? When you buy a cheap one from the Far East, you're getting a material that you don't fully know what it is. And the strength of this blade coming out the front and locking all depends on this locking block here and the strength of this entire area of what this is aluminum. The Far East blades a lot of times will use cheaper materials, not quality aluminums, not aircraft grade aluminums, things like that. They'll use I don't want to say pot metal, but they're cheaper. And you'll see that if anybody ever tries to torture test these by hitting them, extending the blade, putting it down, and then hitting it on the back, most of the time this section here will break. Because the force of that blade hitting on that locking block backwards will break this part out. So that's how they break most often. So when you're buying something like this from a American brand, you're paying for American labor, obviously, trusted materials, so you know that this is, I think, 6064 T6 aluminum. I think that's what it is. It's not 7075. I don't believe it's 7075. So you know it's a certain spec of aluminum. The machining is within a certain tolerance. And most of the time they come out the door perfect. I toured their facility last summer, and they did not allow anything to go out the door that didn't have perfect aesthetics and perfect function. So there you go. There is the inside of an OTF blade, and specifically Microtech. Again, I'm a whore for Microtechs. I'm a total whore for Microtechs. I love their knives. They are expensive, but if you are planning on buying one of these, pick this up as well. Do a Google search. You can find these tools in those Far East places. The websites that sell stuff directly from China, they do exist. If you want to support an American manufacturer, you can pick it up from PVK at the moment. And then PVK buys them directly from another company who you can also buy directly from. I can't remember the name, but if you search around the internet, you can find them, and it will save you like $2 or $3. So you don't save a whole lot by buying direct. Your best bet, since PVK stocks these, is pick them up from them. Rumor mill says that Microtech is developing their own set of tools for you to buy for your blades. I've yet to see it, and I really hope they do bring it out, because I'd love to buy the official Microtech. They had them at one point. They used to have a screwdriver set that you could buy, but those are long dried up. They don't exist anymore on the open market. There you go. There is how a cool out the front knife works. All in the blink of an eye. Literally, in the blink of an eye, all of that takes place. Locks your blade out, locks it in, and they work great. So, hope you guys like it. I will catch you guys next week. We'll have something else next week for you guys. All right, see ya.